What's up, everybody? Sterling Anderson here, and you are now inside the Sterling Report here on Grant Cardone TV. Have a very great guest with me today, Mr. Cris Chico, who is the king of virtual wholesaling. He invented that part of the business, so I'm very excited to have him here on the show. We're going to talk about some great things today when it comes to virtual wholesaling, how to get into virtual wholesaling, and just the best strategies in having success in that part of the business. Cris, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here and excited. So I'm glad we got a chance to. We're getting a chance to chat here, and I'm excited to share some really great information that people can take and they can start using in their current real estate business.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Well, kind of fill us in on you and how you got your start and a little background on you.
Well, I always start and say in a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, I used to be an accountant, a bean counter. And I got the degree because I thought it was like the most reasonable degree to get out of college. But then about 6 months later, I figured out that I didn't want to be an accountant. And so then I started the journey of trying to figure things out, and I got my real estate license and became a real estate agent. And I was horrible as a real estate agent. If you could imagine, right now, back then, right now I weigh about 190 pounds. Back then, about 145 pounds with one of those, remember in Office Depot, those suitcases, the briefcases that, the fake leather ones, right? Because I couldn't afford the real leather one, and it was huge. And I would show up to people's houses with this briefcase and driving. If you remember that show, Knight Rider. Yeah, I would be driving that show, Knight Rider. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. I don't know if you're muted or not.
Yeah, I have my cell phone.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. Sorry about that. So I used to drive this Knight Rider looking car. So I would show up to people's houses, asking them to trust me with their most valuable possession, which is their house. 40-pound guy that looked like he just walked out of high school. And my office manager always said to me, Cris, whenever you came in and somebody gave you their house, I was shocked that somebody would trust you with their property. So I did that for a bit, and I couldn't get it to work. And then I was lucky enough that I got an opportunity to work for the banks, and so I became an REO agent where I was actually listing the properties for the banks as they foreclosed on the properties. And so I did that for about a year, and it was a particular investor that was buying most of my properties as an REO agent. And so what I ended up doing is about a couple years into it, he offered the opportunity to, hey, come work for me and do what you're doing here, but I think I could help, just come work under me. And so for about a year I worked under him, and he was, everybody has a mentor. He was like my real estate mentor, because in that year period of time I didn't make that much money because I got paid like $1,000 a deal, and he made a lot more money. But I got the experience in that short period of time of, I did 50 deals. So if you think about it, to do 50 deals, you have to look at a lot of properties. And so therefore I got the experience of what would normally take somebody 2 or 3 years. I got it in a very condensed 1 year period of time. And so I did that with him, and then I eventually decided to go on my own. And so when I went on my own, I tried a bunch of different things, and I saw that a lot of the successful investors were doing direct mail. And so I thought, you know what, instead of trying to do 2, 3, or 4 or 5 different things, let me just focus on direct mail. And in the beginning it was tough. I couldn't figure things out. And eventually I went down the path of learning direct response marketing and learning how to write an effective advertisement, etc. And so in that process I developed a series of postcards, and I figured out a list to mail to, that then when I combined them, it just automatically just really transformed what I was doing. I mean, I went back at the day, I went from making just a couple $1,000s a month and literally once I figured that equation out, in about 6 months, I went from that to making more money. I remember this because it was during the summer, and then 6 months later, around January, I made $110,000 in a single month, which is more than I have made in a whole year. And so it's interesting because a lot of times you are in doing something or struggling, and success is just around the corner, and then when it does happen, it blows up. I mean, it does in a very dramatic way, and a lot of times most people don't really understand that it could just kind of blow up at an instant.
I
And
always think about that 3 feet from gold picture
yes.
that you always see about that. We're just right there, so don't give up. You definitely have to keep going.
Yeah, exactly. And so for me, I learned how to use a combination of postcards and the right seller list, and that's how I got started in real estate investing. And so from that, I would say to everyone that's listening on the call, the best advice I can give anyone is to always pick one thing, because in the past I was struggling because I was scattered among doing short sales, foreclosures, and just about everything else, because you don't really know what's going to work, and so you want to try everything. And to me, I settled on one thing, and also settled on direct mail, because I knew that if I wanted to talk to 100 sellers next week, I could easily put together a mailing campaign. The next week, I could be talking to sellers. And so that's one of the advice pieces that I give to people is always just try to focus on one thing, grab it, and really learn it, master it, and then you can always build from there. But you really need the focus of that one thing that you can that you can sink your teeth in and plant your flag in order to make things work.
That's
And
awesome, man. That's good.
and so then what happened is that I was doing deals here in the South Florida area, and then what happened is that the market started to turn here, right? Because people were drinking the house Kool-Aid here, and they were buying properties for all kind of crazy money, and things started to just kind of shift here. But I noticed that other investors in other areas of the country, their prices hadn't gone up that much, and so as a result, they were still doing fine, and that market was still humming along. And so I said, well, gee, why can't I do that over there? And so what I ended up doing is just through a lot of trial and error, because back when I did this, when I first started this in 2006 or 7, there was no Google Street View. There was none of the tools that we have right now, right? It was like me getting on a plane, and I remember going to Jacksonville, Florida, and I got on the plane, and I drove by like 20 properties because there was no Google Street View, and I learned then that that's never a good thing to do, because by the time you get to your 20th property, you've forgotten everything else you've seen that day. So through a lot of trial and error, I figured out how to go out into a market, how to learn the market without actually being there, getting the right list, finding out who the buyers are, and then I started to do deals virtually. So even when the market here in South Florida kind of tanked a little bit, I was still able to do deals in other parts of the country. And then what ended up happening is just I had developed all these systems and processes for my staff that I was running down here in the South Florida area and in these other markets, and I just decided, hey, let me share this with people. And I just really literally took all my videos and everything that was my staff was doing and uploaded it and gave people access. And then all of a sudden, what I'm known for is a term called virtual wholesaling, which is how to find and flip properties anywhere in the USA, really using only your cell phone and a laptop. And so that's the short condensed story of how I got to be here with you today, speaking on the phone.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, yeah, you definitely done some great things in virtual wholesaling. So I remember, just watching you just for the past, past few years. I'd always watch the videos, and having product to be able to look over and everything like that, man. So I'm always inspired, of course, by your story and just what you've been able to do going out there doing virtual deals. I know from that, we've been able to, hop into the Kansas City market and hop into Dallas and Atlanta and, doing some things in Houston and Detroit as well. So just off of that, been able to make some pretty good opportunities. So I love virtual wholesaling, especially being here in Omaha, Nebraska, where sometimes things may get a little slow. I can
Right.
still make some things happen, in my
Wait,
warmer markets and do that.
people live in Omaha, Nebraska still?
They do, man. We're
Yeah.
all over here. We're all over
I
here.
checked.
Yeah.
I checked my vacation list right before I'm in California right now, obviously. So, and it wasn't on my top 10, but though I may make it just to go visit you.
Do that, man. We'd love to have you here, man. That
Yeah.
would be great. That would be good. Absolutely. Cool, cool, cool. Well, I know we have always have people that says, well, what is wholesaling? How do I wholesale a deal? How do I do virtual? So kind of in your opinion, what would you explain, when people ask, what is wholesaling? How do I do that?
Well, wholesaling, so it's a great question. So just to make sure everybody's on the same page, I think wholesaling is the best way for anyone in real estate investing to get started, because you're minimizing the risk and the potential pitfalls that you may have as a beginner. And so when most people think about flipping properties, they think about those guys on TV flipping houses, buying a property, getting money out of their bank account, getting a loan, and then repairing it, and hopefully being able to sell that property at a profit 2 or 3 months down the line. And that's a great model. I'm not knocking it. However, it's not the best model for someone starting out brand new in the business. And so wholesaling is exactly the best model for someone starting out brand new. Now, the key thing about wholesaling is that, and the distinction is that we are not flipping houses. We're not selling houses. We're actually selling contracts. So what we do is we go out and we find motivated sellers that are looking to sell their property at a discount. Then we are placing that property under contract. So then now, as a result, we have an ownership interest, not in the property, but we actually own the contract. And now we go out and we look for other real estate investors that are looking for that type of property. And then we offer them our contract for sale. And they buy that contract because they are not able to find deals on their own. That's our specialty. Our specialty is in the marketing and doing and finding these sellers. And now we go ahead and we sell them the contract, and then they go ahead and close on that property a few weeks later, and we get paid for that. And so the numbers example would be, let's say we have a property that we put on the contract for $50,000. It's worth $120,000, and we decide to then take our contract and mark it up to, say, $10,000. And so we offer that contract to another investor. We say, hey, our contract total that you're buying is $60,000, so there's a $10,000 spread on there, and they say yes, we want it, and so the other investor is the one that puts up the money, the other investor is the one that closes on the deal, the other investor does everything, we just then get paid for finding the deal. On a single deal as much as $98,000 on a single deal like that. And so it's a great opportunity because, and therefore, if you make a mistake or if you're in the beginning you are bound to make mistakes, then this particular mode of investing is the best way. And what virtual wholesaling does, it gives you a couple different options, because wholesaling in general is great. And I always say that the distinction is virtual wholesaling is just, I look at it as a way of streamlining and removing you from the physical aspects of doing the deal. So it doesn't necessarily have to be you going into an outside market out of your own local area, because sometimes your local market may be great already, but it just means taking the concept of virtual wholesaling, which is never having to, how do you do the deal without personally meeting the seller, without personally meeting the buyer, without inspecting the property, without having to know anything about repairs, and how to create systems and processes in your business so that then then you move from being the guy that does everything. I always like to use the analogy of the airplane, of flying airplanes, right? So in the beginning, everybody is the pilot, the steward, the baggage claim person. You're everything, right? But eventually, you want to move and transition to where now you become the traffic, the guy up at the traffic tower, right? And so I think that the way I look at it is virtual wholesaling it allows you to do that, allows you to transition to kind of being the overseer of things using technology and systems, and that could be in your local market or it could be in a market that's 1,000 miles away or both. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely, it sure does. And that's one of the things that I'm so focused on now, because I was doing, I'm here, I'm there, and I'm doing this. I just wanted to come back and just center on something and just stay focused on just that one thing, which is wholesaling, but also rebuilding my systems so that I can have more of a hands-off approach and be able to delegate and have other people doing these things that I go out and do essentially on a daily basis. So,
Yes,
if you
exactly.
guys caught that, virtual wholesaling doesn't have to be, completely in another city, although that's great, but it's also, too, just being able to have those systems in place in your own home market to be able to do that. Chris, if you could talk a little bit about how you build your team to, because of course having a team of successful people surrounding you to help you implement things in your business is pretty key.
Well, the team building, I would say I would answer that in a couple ways. I think the foundation of everything, right, is always generating revenue, right? So in order for you to be able to build a team, you have to be able to build the revenue model such that now you can fund that, right? And so I think, to me, the biggest thing that I could advise people on is the marketing, right? And so that's one of the things that for me has really transformed my business. And I'll share with you a couple things, and I want to share with you. One is the type of marketing that we do specifically to find these sellers, because I think it's unique and allows us a different way of going into a market and getting more leads and getting more access and getting access to sellers that are really not typically there in a particular market for other investors, and also talk about a particular type of seller that I call the invisible seller, right? And that most people don't realize. And so what we do is we specialize in postcards, right? And I'm going to tie this into the outsourcing thing, so I'm just kind of looping around to it. So we use the way that we market is we market with small little postcards that we send to a targeted list of sellers, and the way that there's a 24-hour recorded message that is on that postcard, where when the seller receives a postcard, they'll call in, listen to that message, and then at that point, then they'll go ahead and they'll leave a message and they'll say, yeah, I'm interested in selling my house. So in the past, we were just sending out postcards that said, hey, I want to buy your house, please call me, just like everybody else does. But we found is that there was a lot of competition because everybody else was sending that type of mailing. So now what we do is that we send marketing that is what I call blind marketing, which means is that we never tell the seller, in fact, that we want to buy their house. We don't say anything that we're a buyer, that we're looking to buy their property or anything like that. We're just looking for them to call into our phone system. And once they call into our phone system, now that becomes a lead. And so I would say to everyone is everybody's always looking for motivated sellers. And I always say that I never buy properties from motivated sellers. Right? A motivated seller would be like everybody's expecting you're going to send a postcard out and you're going to get somebody that says, hey, I'm so desperate to sell my house. I'm so glad you called me. Please come by today and get this thing off my hands. And I haven't bought a property from someone like that in quite a few years. Most of the people that we do deals with are reasonable sellers that understand that the property needs repairs, understand that there is not going to be, they're not going to be able to get full market value for the property, and they see the benefits of selling to an investor versus going through a realtor and repairing the property. And so then what we do is we want to maximize the bucket of those sellers that we have an opportunity to work with. And so what we do is the way it works for us is that they get the postcard, they call into the phone system, and then now some people leave a phone message, and then the people that leave a phone message, we have a staff that then will listen to the message, transcribe the message, pull all the property detail reports, the comp reports, etc. Initially, if you're starting out, you would do that, but going back to the outsourcing part, you would start then slivering off some of those mechanical pieces off to different levels of staff, right? So in the beginning, when you're outsourcing more of the menial, more of the mechanical stuff that then frees you up to do what really makes the money in the business, which is you talking to buyers and talking to sellers. And so then, so the one thing that people miss, and this is the critical item, is what I call an invisible seller. So it's reasonable if I were to tell you, hey, Sterling, we send out marketing and people call us, they leave messages, and what we do is we call the people that say, please call me back. It sounds reasonable, right, that you would do that. However, though, I tend to be a little bit unreasonable, and so my approach is that anybody who calls you is a lead. Not just the people that say, please call me back because I'm interested in selling my property. And so what happens with us is that when people call in to our 24 recorded message system, the voicemail system captures everybody's information. So regardless of whether or not you called and left a message, or maybe you called and hung up, we call you back. And the invisible seller are those sellers that most real estate investors never call back. It's a seller that calls in, may listen to my 24-hour recorded message, and then what they do is they hang up and they disappear, because for whatever reason, maybe they didn't feel comfortable leaving a message. Maybe they just weren't ready just yet. And so what happens with most real estate investors, they completely ignore those people because they say, well, they must have not been interested. And so what we find is that those to us are the most valuable leads, because what happens is that nobody else is calling them back. In the last 30 days, we had done, our team had done a little bit over $40,000 in profits, in actual profits, spending about $2,000 in marketing, so still a pretty good net ROI and return. And this is out of 2 deals that we did over the last 3 weeks. And both of those deals came from sellers that just called the voicemail system and hung up the phone. And most other investors would have never called those people back. And so for us, one of the key things I would tell people, if you're listening on this line and you're doing any sort of marketing, and you have a way that you've captured both voicemail messages and also people that have just hung up, I guarantee you that if you just go back to all of your leads that you've had over the last 30 to 45 days, and you just called everybody back, and it's a simple conversation that says, hey, I was just returning your call. You just assume that they called and left a message. Hey, I was just returning your call about the house for sale, and you called and I missed your call, just wondering if you have a house for sale. Some people will say, I didn't have a house for sale. I just called in and I was just curious. Or they might say, yeah, I did have a house for sale, but I just didn't have a chance to leave a message. And you say, great, I'd love to have your information. Let's see if it's a property that that might be worthwhile. And so that, to me, is anybody who's listening in, if you just did that, you could dramatically, number one, expand the number of leads you have from your marketing. And then number two is, I guarantee you that you have leads in there in your database that are waiting for you to call them, that could be deals, but you're missing out. And they're easy because nobody else is calling them, because they're not leaving messages for anybody else. And so for us, we just look at my belief is that the marketing is just a way of bringing people in, but where the rubber meets the road is having that conversation with the seller, because it's the postcard doesn't sell them. The postcard doesn't convince them that they want to do business with you. It's you speaking with them. It's a conversation. And I always give and if I look at my leads, and we look at any of the deals that we have, if I look at the conversation, right, log, sometimes it's pages long, right? And I always give the example of when you call a seller back and it's the first time I call them, I'd say, hey, Sterling, it's Chris. And they're like, Chris who? And you're like, well, it's, remember I sent you the postcard, the little, and you listen, and they're like, oh yeah, I remember now. And then you call them a second time, and you're like, Chris, and they're like, Chris who? And the guy with the investor, and they're like, yeah. So eventually you want to get to the point where you call them back, and they say, hey, Chris, how's it going? Yes, because they recognize your voice, and so that's how deals are done. I mean, we do so many deals from people that. So I think that's the other advice I would give you. Is that as well. And so if you combine all those things together, it's everybody's always looking for one thing, right? Everybody says, Chris, if I could only have the right marketing, if I could only have the right list, if I could only have that. And I think, to me, that puts people down the path of not being successful, because I believe that it's never about one thing. I always believe it's a combination of things. It's a combination of having the right marketing, having the right follow-up, being good on the phone with people. Because if you're horrible on the phone, and people are not going to want to do any business with you, right? And so I think it's a combination of all these things that come together to all of a sudden have somebody be tremendously successful. And I experienced that myself, because I struggled with talking to sellers. I was horrible at that, and I was horrible at the marketing, and I was horrible at all these different things, until I got all those things to work together in unison is when really I had success. So I covered a lot of different things. I didn't mean to ramble on, but it's just so many things going on in my head. And trying to give advice based on kind of my experience.
Right. And that's really key. If you guys caught that, no matter what he was facing or no matter what he was going through, he still overcame that. And we have to do that a lot, in this business, especially when you're starting out. I remember when I was starting out, I hated getting on the phone and talking to sellers. I didn't want that whole fear of rejection, or they reject my offer, or going out to a property and not knowing, what to do. But repetition is so key in this business. Of course, the more that you do, you get out there and you make things better. But you have to get out there and do it. There's no procrastination in this business. I have some days where I don't want to make the phone calls or I don't want to do those things, but I have to do it. The things that I don't want to do the most are the things I should be doing, at that particular point, man. So this has, truly been so much great information, Cris. I definitely want to, get my hands on that postcard, show other people how they can get their hands on that postcard too. So I know we're actually going to put a link, on the show page to where people can get that high impact postcard and be able to get out here and make some great things happen.
Yeah, and I want to make a quick comment about that. So what I want everybody to do is he's going to give you a link to a postcard that you can use, and you could use this postcard for any sort of seller list that you have, whether it be probates, whether it be absentee owners, landlords, it doesn't matter. You take that postcard, and when you send out this card, you're going to use a 24-hour recorded voice message system, and so therefore you capture everybody who calls in. And what you do is you just simply call everybody back. You call the people that leave a message, but the phone system also lets you know who are the people that called and didn't leave a message, and you just call them back and you say, hey, just calling about the house for sale, return your call, I missed your call the other day, wondering if you have a house for sale, and just do that. A couple things will happen is, number one, whatever marketing you're using already, you're going to generate a lot more calls. So you're going to have a lot more leads to work with. That means that you're going to have to be able to have more leads without having to spend more money in marketing. Just doing that. Number two, it's just going to give you more opportunities to speak with sellers. So if you're not great on the phone, it's repetition. So the more sellers you can speak with, the better you're going to get, the faster you're going to get it, the faster you're going to get better at it. And it's just a matter of just calling all those people back. And yes, some of them will say, no, I'm not interested, etc. But I guarantee you, if you just do what I take this postcard and use it, I guarantee you that you're gonna have results, because it's the sheer numbers of it. You're gonna have more people to speak with, and you're gonna have more success. And so I wanted to just share one tool that you could just walk away with on this interview and say, I'm gonna implement this and I'm gonna get results from it, and hopefully put some deals together.
Awesome, man. That's good. Actually, me and Daniel Wiafe, we actually did a campaign here in Omaha using one of those postcards, and we knew the exact day it hit because I think we had it had to be over 100 or 150 calls just in that weekend. So you definitely know when it hit, and we started the process of, we had, of course, a lot of, hang-ups or people not leaving messages, but you're able to make some opportunities and make some deals when you do pick up that phone and even call those people back. So the people that left messages, great. Of course, the ones you get some crazy messages. I recorded some of those. I think I might just have a show just on, some of the messages that we do get from postcards. But it is a part of the business. You move on from it and you keep going to make deals happen. So we'll definitely make sure we get that link. Cris, thanks so much for sharing that with us. To certainly encourage people to get out there, make some deals happen, and do deals. I'm very big on, mindset is everything in this business. If you could kind of talk about just the mindset, that you need to have in this business of being successful with wholesaling.
In terms of mindset, the mindset that you need in order to be successful, I would say that I would say there's one thing that I believe that I would say, to become an entrepreneur, right? So not necessarily mean a real estate investor. I would say, what is the one thing that I believe that everybody should have? Because if it's almost like in cooking, if you have butter, you can apply butter to everything, right? Because butter is like the ultimate cooking condiment. And to me, I would say resourcefulness, right? Because as an entrepreneur, you have to be willing to deal with a high degree of ambiguity and a high degree of just not knowing a lot of things. And so what I find is that people get frustrated because everything isn't spelled out 100%. A, B, C, D, E. All the dots are connected. Or maybe the dots are connected, but then all of a sudden as they're going through the process, something isn't right. Or maybe just something doesn't work exactly as they would want it to be. And I think, to me, the biggest mindset shift is a mindset of resourcefulness, that you may not have whatever you're looking for. Maybe you don't have the marketing, maybe you don't have the skills, maybe you need, in terms of talking with sellers, whatever it is that you don't have. I believe that having that mindset of resourcefulness, that some way, somehow, I'm going to figure it out, that I'm going to look for the answer. And to me, that's something that's always served me well, because no matter the obstacles, no matter what the trials and tribulations are for me, then I always have mindset of, no matter what, I'm resourceful enough that I can figure something out. And to me, that would be the key number one mindset that I think most the successful entrepreneurs have, because you're inevitably going to have stuff that's going to happen. Stuff is not going to work out the way you plan it to be. And I think just a lot of times people get frustrated and they just put your hands up in the air and say, "Ah, forget about it." And I think that that's what separates the people that are successful from the ones that are not.
Wow, that's gold, Chris. That's really good and extremely true. That's great. Well, Chris, thank you so much for sharing a lot of great information with us today on virtual wholesaling, and certainly giving people some things that they can get out and do today to implement in their business, learn more about the business, and certainly get out there and crush it in their business. Where can people find you at online?
You know what? They can go to my website, chrischico.com, or flipanywhere.com, and they can Google my name and they'll find a bunch of stuff about me, and they'll find their way to me. So it's easy, chrischico.com or flipanywhere.com, either one of those two sites, and they can find out more about me.
Perfect. That works, Mel. Chris, thank you so much for being on. I really wish that we could have caught up at the house flipping summit. I was to be there, but I
Yeah,
wasn't
that's
able to
right.
make it there, man. So yeah, I heard you guys had a great and amazing time, and I heard so many great things about it, man. So that's good. I'll be at the San Diego one, and I think they're doing it in January, so I'll be there.
Okay,
So
all right. So hopefully I'll see you there.
cool deal. Well, again, Cris Chico, everybody, thanks so much, Chris, for sharing this with us. You guys can certainly continue to check out the show at grantcardonetv.com/A Sterling Report. We have some more amazing interviews coming up as well. You guys stay tuned. Take care and be blessed.